Welcome to the Tobie and Scott. Hello, welcome to the show. So what we're going to call this?
Oh, sorry, I didn't have my headphones in.
So what we're going to call this?
You've already got a channel, right? So I guess just an extension of that.
The channel's called TML Films, I think.
All right.
Film, book
King,
corner.
King review, Dark Half.
Yeah, Dark Half, Stephen King. Okay, so.
Are we recorded?
Yeah, I started ages ago.
Okay.
Welcome.
Wait. Stop recording. We'll go again. We'll go from
No.
We're going.
This is how it goes. This is how we run it. Go on, let's just do it. So, yeah. Well,
Hello, Toby. How you doing?
How are you?
Good, thank you. And yourself?
Yeah, not too bad. So, go. Do you want to start or shall
I? You can start. It's your channel.
Okay, so this is welcome to the very first pilot episode. My God, brace yourselves, ladies and gentlemen, brace yourselves. No, this is basically me and Scott. Scott had an idea to. I think was it me that started it? It was me that started it with the book review, wasn't it, on the shelves?
Yeah, you've been channeling your King collection.
That was it, yes.
You have an extensive...
Yeah, this is my first edition Stephen King collection. I started doing that. Scott watched all 3 episodes, which is about an hour and 10 minutes or something, about an hour long maybe. I was like, well impressed. He was like, we should do a review, or you should do a review of the book. And then he was like, well, we should do a review of a book. We could do like a discussion back and forth thing of books that we've read, Stephen King, majority of them. And then this is what the fruition of that is, basically, isn't it?
Right. I think we've both been reading on and off Stephen King since we were fairly young. I think you kind of early teens and me later teens.
Yeah, I think 16 was the first time I read a Stephen King book.
16. So I think I do remember reading Insomnia during work experience. I can't remember if that was school or college. So either 16, 17 or 18 sort of age. And I'm pretty sure Insomnia was my first Stephen King.
That's an odd one
I
to start with.
do remember initially not knowing anything about Stephen King apart from The Shining, but purely because of the cover and the elusive blog on the back, thinking it was a murder mystery.
Yes.
About someone who killed someone by snuffing them with a pillow, just because the cover is an indent of a person's head in a pillow, and being...
Shows you how important the cover of a book is.
Right, and then being pretty pleasantly surprised when it was...
I haven't read it. So
I can't go into it. The Crimson King, a lot of fantasy elements based around elderly people. And it's one of his sort of bigger ones.
Yeah.
It's quite a hefty one.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess since then, on and off, reading one every now and then. Just in the UK, you can pretty much go into any secondhand store and find something of his for £1 or £2.
Yeah, every town.
And here we are in adulthood, still going, picking away at his. It doesn't help that he's still going.
Yeah,
like 2 or 3 a year. I can't get rid of his.
His next one is out.
90s backlog, not let alone his 2000s.
Yeah, Tuesday is the next one. It's released.
Tuesday?
Yeah, it comes out on Tuesday. If It Bleeds.
Oh, crikey! That's a compilation.
It's a compilation, 4 short novellas, I think, and it's got the sequel to The Outsider in it.
Oh, okay, nice.
You haven't read The Outsider yet, have you?
No, I did know when we were talking the other day, you are a lot more well-read with his more recent stuff.
Yeah, present.
I guess the last 20 years, post-millennial stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I've read a few, but I'm sort of making my way through his backlog still.
Yeah, which is weird, because I came into Stephen King, obviously, with this one, The Dark Half. And then I read a few others, but like really strange ones, like you said earlier on, Dolores Claiborne. I read that. I think that was the second one I read, but it was that period that got me into it. But then I drifted off for a while and didn't read much at all, and then came back in with the modern stuff. Well, I think probably around, I don't know, can't remember exactly which one it was of the modern stuff that got me back into it. But Revival, I remember reading that, and then Doctor Sleep, and then the Mercedes trilogy, so on and so forth. So somewhere around the Revival, I think maybe I came back in, either Doctor Sleep or Revival.
Almost like we grew up for a while and stopped reading books, and now we've regressed again.
No, it's before I'd read The Dark Half, I didn't really read an awful lot. I don't know whether you were a seasoned reader when you read Insomnia, because it's a massive book to pick up. I was frightened of books that size when I started reading.
Yeah, that is, I guess that's one of the early visually hefty books that I read. I was, at that age, a fairly big reader.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of what I was reading.
I like to call the big books the books you can kill
16. I was going to say Goosebumps, but no, that was more
quite a few Goosebumps,
the 10 years ages. I don't know.
Did you ever read I think it's a Goosebumps novel, or it might Point Horror?
Yes, I remember those. We used to get these travelling libraries to our school.
Mm-hmm.
They would come in, and you would go in, and we had a library, but what it was, they would just come in and sell a multitude of books. I guess there was some sort of discount.
Mm-hmm.
I remember picking up a few Point Horrors. Can't remember any of them. I definitely remember the little logo and having them.
Did you ever read The Babysitter?
No, I don't think so.
Brilliant. They were. That's literally just now that they've come back into my mind. But Babysitter 1, 2, and 3 were my introduction to horror as a real young lad.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And they were freaking great. Bit Scream-esque.
I think around that time I was reading a lot of vampire stuff. I don't know if you know. Let me pronounce it. Necromancoscope.
Oh yeah.
Necroscope.
I'm very
they had these incredibly vivid covers.
Yes. There was 3 of them, wasn't there?
Design of like a skull with worms coming out of it.
Like H.R. Geiger looking.
Yes. Actually, I saw a pretty cool YouTube video of someone talking about what happened to horror book covers, which I will get you to post on the bottom of your links thing, because it was pretty interesting, just talking about the identity of horror books.
Yeah.
And just saying, if you put a bunch of horror books up now, would you know what they're about? Whereas you used to be able to, for better or worse.
Yeah. So you look at Clive Barker.
Right.
Covers where there's only one thing this is going to be about.
Yeah, and certainly a lot of old Stephen King ones. A hand coming out of a grave, sort of imagery. Yeah. There's no mistaking it. Right, you've got your 2 dark halves there. Exactly. Right.
So the Dark Half. Talking about Dark Half, that's definitely the first. This is the first Stephen King book I ever read. So, and I don't know where I got it from. I think I might have picked it up out of. Let's go back in time a bit here, brain. It's probably a charity shop. Probably Oxfam. I would have gone to those. I went to those quite young when I was younger. But again, for me, I hadn't read much in that point in time, but it is quite a thick book. It's not small.
It's probably going on 300-400 pages, I guess.
It is, just 405 pages.
Okay. So you chose that book. It wasn't something that was on your shelf.
No, it's just my parents wouldn't have had anything like this in the house. It's not the type of material they'd read. Not that they were against it, but they just wouldn't have read that sort of thing. So I got it, and I think before that I'd read, like I said, Point Horror and the Narnia books, C.S. Lewis and all that sort of thing. But then I got this and I started reading. I think it was mostly the cover that got me into it, especially the UK cover. The George Stark is not a very nice guy. I think that sold it. And then when I read the inside cover, you get the synopsis, it just grabbed me straight away, and then that was it. I was hooked. I remember being in college, I couldn't stop reading it, so I was so engrossed in it that when my lunch breaks I would read it.
Okay.
So I was at college doing my degree in caring, or a course in caring, and I would read it underneath the desk while the teacher was giving lectures. Just I got into trouble doing that once. But it hooked me from the start. So do you want to tell our esteemed viewers what the book is about, if those that haven't read it, give an overview?
Yes. All right, you five, listen up. So I did read it when I was, I'm pretty sure at uni, so early 20s. But I did this week, once we decided to do it, because we just picked one of the books we both read, listen to the audiobook.
Did you listen to the whole thing?
I'm about 10 minutes away from the end.
Oh, well done. Fair play. I haven't. I literally.
I should have asked you to wait for 10 minutes, but I kind of got the point.
Mm-hmm.
So my memories of reading it when I was in my 20s was there is a low point in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And I do remember you telling me you felt the same thing, but keep going because it picks up.
Lull for some reason. I keep ringing around in the back of my mind.
Yeah, and listening this time around, I think I sort of found that area.
Yes.
I guess it wasn't something in me then, it's something in the book. So what is The Dark Half about? It's about an author who has a non-diplome, like an alter personality, where he writes books. So he had a little bit of success with his first book and then didn't live up to expectation. And just for money and to write books that wouldn't be under the microscope, he came up with an alter ego and wrote some violent crime novels. And the alter ego he wrote under was George Stark. And then those became more successful than anything he ever wrote, at least commercially. I've jumped something here, which is the intro to the whole book.
Yeah.
Which is quite a Stephen King thing to do. I guess it's quite a...
What did you think to that opening?
I kind of liked it. It sets that... It sets the precedent. It's... I guess
that's what got me straight away.
Very big in the horror genre to have an incident out of time and place to where our main story will be. And in this case, he's about 11 years old, and it says two things that would change his life happened to him. One was that he entered a short story competition, and he was going to win, but it turned out he entered too young, so he was disqualified. But it kind of piqued his interest in writing. And the second is that he has seizures, and the doctors, thinking there's a tumor, open up his brain and find a bit of a nose, an eyeball, some teeth, and some hair. And basically say that in embryo he absorbed...
The nurses, doesn't it?
There is a nurse who runs out the room screaming. Yes. And the surgeon...
This is the bit in the book that I would just like...
This is the bang open, right? I feel like you get this in a lot of horror movies where they have to start with a bang, because otherwise you get half an hour of just character and build-up. So you always want to start with something kind of scary in action to get them hooked. The nurse does run out screaming, and the doctor calls her a C word and says, "I'm going to fire her." So I guess instantly we know it's an adult book. We're getting pretty grotesque imagery of eyeballs in brains and the language.
Remember it being very vivid. Right.
So they remove it, and the kids kind of find, and that's, the closing opening. Cut to...
Don't once they remove it, doesn't the sparrows turn up and take it away?
It does, but we don't know that till later. Like, as far as that opening goes, yep, they had a nice little operation, and the doctor's sort of like has a bit of curiosity, but says this kind of thing can happen with in embryo absorption. So we cut to a PR stunt, like some 20 30 years later.
Yeah, something like that.
I'm not quite sure how old he is, but he's got to be in his 30s. He's married and he has 2 kids who are toddlers, and they're not talking that kind of age, and they're twins, which I guess means something because the book will go in and out of twins a lot.
Yeah, the whole psychic
Right.
and stuff.
And like I said earlier, he's just killed off his alter ego writer. So he had some success.
Right, that's his publicity stunt, yeah.
Right, he's had some success as a writer, doing like pulp, violent novels, but he's now killed that side of his life off after about 5 or 6 novels, I think. And just for an interview photo shoot in a magazine, a reporter has created a tombstone for his alter ego, and they're pictured in a cemetery, like him and his wife standing on it laughing. And they talk a little about why he ends it, purely because he just has nothing left. Maybe he had 1 or 2 novels left, but he said he wouldn't be happy writing those.
Yeah, like the person he was becoming while writing them.
Yeah, he's just getting on with life. It's time for that to come to an end. And then that night, I think, the graveyard owner, who this was kind of fun for me. Stephen King has a thing of giving people nicknames because they've been around so long. In this case, he introduces the graveyard keeper, who is Steve Holt, but he's known around here as Steve Digger, or just Digger, because he digs graveyards. So what he does became his nickname. And he finds a hole in the cemetery where he does sort of muse that this looks like someone has climbed out of it, not dug in.
Yeah.
And he thinks this is the spot where the photo shoot happened. But keep in mind, there was no body there. It was just a PR stunt. And this made me laugh because in Steve Digger's analysis of the vandals and what happened, he says, if you follow these footprints, they went right through my flowers. This guy kicked my flowers over. I wouldn't want to mess with a guy who would do that kind of thing. Yeah, I guess kicking the flowers over was a step too far. And then we kind of follow the shadow of this person.
Yeah.
And we get our first murder of the book. So after climbing out of this graveyard, he then hitchhikes into town, and the person who picks him up is another town local. So you get the sense it's that main, I think this is Castle Rock, which is about 5 of his books are set in here.
Yeah.
And mention of it is in a lot more. So everyone kind of knows everyone. And the person picking up the hitchhiker has a fake leg, who is found in the morning beaten to death with his fake leg, which is a good start to the violence ensuing. And the police instantly are pulled over to, we haven't even said any names, have we?
No.
His name is, what's his name, Toby?
Alan Pangborn.
No, so the detective is Alan Pangborn.
Okay, who? Tad Beaumont?
Tad Beaumont, sorry, yes. Like I said, I was just listening to your audiobook 10 minutes ago, but I've forgotten. So the police are instantly pulled over to Tad Beaumont because it fits the description
of one of his killings, isn't it? That was done in the book.
Yeah, and there's sort of a nosy neighbour who is sort of narrating what she saw, and the description kind of fits him.
Go on, say on. I'm going to interject in a minute because I've got a point. But
go.
The point where you want to interject. So at the point in the story now that there's somebody's going around killing people that are connected to the death of George Stark, if I'm right.
Yeah, so this first person, it seems like there isn't a connection other than they knew him from around town. And he is almost the anomaly, this first guy with the prosthetic leg.
Yeah.
Because it just seemed like he killed him because it was the first guy he met.
Right, okay.
But the spree that him follows is the person who wrote the article, his publisher. So part of the reason why he killed his alter ego was that another writer who has no success, and I think not a writer, just an aspiring writer, came across it and tried to blackmail him.
That's it.
Rather than being blackmailed, it was just the final straw for him.
Yeah.
But these are countrywide. These are happening in other cities and states in New York.
Yeah. The killing.
Often we don't witness the murder. I think for at least two of them, we have a witness account of someone coming across the scene. And this is where Alan Panghorn comes in, I think, because the fingerprints match Tad Beaumont's.
That's exactly it, this is where I want to interject. He revisits this idea of an impossible killing. Like, all the evidence is there to say Tad did it.
Right.
But Tad has foolproof alibis for the locations that he's in at the times of the killing. So he couldn't have done it, but yet his prints are there.
Right.
And he does this exact same thing in The Outsider.
Right. That's one of his more recent ones, the last 3 or 4 years, which just released a season 1, which I haven't watched or seen, but I know the concept. Which is pretty interesting, I guess. He's coming back to old ideas, and I guess from what I know about The Outsider, correct me if I'm wrong, is it very court case? Is it very...
There's some elements of court, but it's not court case, no.
Okay. So, yeah, I guess...
Road movie, road trip movie.
Okay. That I did not know. I thought it was all... I guess I pictured like he was arrested, so he couldn't road trip because, he was in jail and awaiting trial. But I haven't read it, so I just...
I don't want to ruin it.
All right, well, we'll do that one another time once I've read it.
Thad is...
Yes, but he does have an airtight alibi. And so Stephen King, he quite often gets criticised for his writing of women.
Yes.
I guess...
I'm not seeing an awful lot of that, but I can see why once you...
I imagine his older stuff more so.
Yeah.
But I'm not too well versed of his new stuff. But there are some examples in this one of why I would see that happening. So they threw a party on the night of a murder, so that's their alibi. And for some reason, his wife is just really quite bitchy to some of the other guests whilst talking to the FBI. She is basically going something, well, I'm going to paraphrase, but like, oh yes, your friend from work, Steve, was there. And that god-awful girl he's been dating, X and X, isn't she horrible, the things she says and does, which struck me as something you probably wouldn't go into detail in when you're being quizzed for murder by the FBI. Yeah. But it's over and done, and the book goes on. But it did spike out a little. With the Alan Panghorn detective, I did notice we do get 2 references back to back. One is about a Saint Bernard that went mad and killed people. I think you know what that reference is, to Cujo. And then he talks about a gruesome murder. I don't want to give this away, but there's a reference to the Dead Zone.
Okay.
Which I'm not sure if you've read.
No, not yet.
So I won't give away, because it kind of gives away a midpoint twist.
Okay.
It's quite a subtle reference, but they're both there. And I guess that's just for fans of him.
Yeah.
I'll come back to this later, because as we know, that we pretty early on as the reader know what the deal is, that it is in fact a physical manifestation of this alter ego who's come back to killing people. But actually a fair amount of the book is Panghorn trying to figure out how and why this is happening, which is not odd for us, but it takes up a lot of pages when we know his theories aren't right.
Right, okay. That's interesting. So this is the bit that I don't really remember.
Right.
So I remember the beginning, I remember the end, and I remember some of the killings, but the actual bulk of what makes the book up, I guess, like you're saying now.
Because Tad and his wife quickly, I would say fairly quickly, get into the fact that the alter egos come to life.
Yeah, they believe it quite straight up forward, isn't it?
Yeah, there is a psychic connection between Tad and Stark, they can sort of hypnotically tune into each other without realizing.
That's right, yes. And there's a whole thing with typewriters and pencils, if I remember rightly.
Yes. So when Tad wrote his own novels, he would use a typewriter.
Yes, that's
And almost like when you hear about actors getting into character,
it.
he had some ways of writing that he wouldn't, but he believed his alter ego would. He kind of created a backstory for this alter ego, like he'd done time in prison and was just not a real nice guy, a shady background. And he always wrote his novels in pencil.
Yeah. HB2 or something like that. The specific type of pencil as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, it goes into the paper, the pencil, the whole methading. We do find around the crime scenes there are written things such as the sparrows are gathering.
Yeah, sparrows are flying.
The sparrows are flying, and we don't really know what this means, but Tad has started to hear the flapping of birds, and he kind of puts it down to migraines and stuff. Let me see, I made some brief notes. So we talked about, we have the writer bang to rights at the murder scene with people saying the guy kind of looked like him, and more importantly, his fingerprints.
I remember, just to digress quickly, I remember one of the killings being really sort of just stuck in my head ever since, and that was the guy that was, I can't remember how he was killed, but I just remember there'd be like a silhouette or shadow on the wall when the detectives come in, and his penis is like down his throat or something like that, sticking out. He chops his penis off and sticks it in his throat, and then you see it and reflecting on the wall or something like that.
All of the deaths are pretty gruesome and mutilated corpses. Yes, there's a lot of description of dismemberments. A lot of threats to popping out eyeballs. Later on, we'll get a lot of threats towards like really young, like the children. So one day, this is where the story gets not strange in structure, but it kind of moves quickly and takes its time simultaneously. So one day, Thad watches one of his babies sort of fall off something, and then, it's fine, it's just like a bruised arm. But then when changing the twin, he notices that the other baby has the same bruises. And that sort of enforces his connection, what he believes is connection. And they kind of discover all this talk of sparrows, that Stark doesn't know anything about that there's a blind spot in him, because he doesn't know. Like they start talking to each other. Stark starts calling him up to poke at him, and I guess this is where we realize that Stark wants him to keep writing. Like the only way for him to stay alive is for Thad to write another novel under his name. And so the plot progresses. There's more threats and murder, but we get to the point where Stark kidnaps the wife and the babies. It's not a particularly sophisticated plan.
No.
He kind of kills the cops and grabs her.
Not Alan, though.
No, just the wife and the kids. And then I guess it's where it's all right. It feels a bit convoluted and filling, because he's being tailed by cops for his own protection. Alan has to kind of set up escaping them, so he can sort of play ball with this guy. So he's at his university and he has to come up with some ridiculous, I need to use the bathroom, out of a window, running away. And then, so this is where Alan Panghorn, the detective on the case, finds the original surgeon and quizzes him. It's not really clear why. So they've been trying to convince him all along that the manifestation has come real, which we'll come back to. I do want to ask you if you would have the balls to tell police that you think that's all is involved. And this is where we find out, after he removed the eye and teeth as the surgery from when he was young, although he wasn't there, thousands, if not millions, of swallows swarmed the hospital and just caused a ruckus.
Yeah.
And so,
Starling.
yes,
Yes. One of those.
right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we have this understanding that they're important. Like you sort of think at the beginning they're just an like a dark sign.
Yeah.
Many films would just use crows or ravens cawing, but they're not really involved. They're just a sign of things to come. I guess folklore, ravens, crows, sparrows are harbingers of harbingers
Yeah.
of death, and Greek mythology and stuff. They carry souls back and forward.
That's exactly it. The birds in this book are, I think, they're mythological.
Right.
It is that they carry spirits off to the other realm.
Right. So to kind of cut forward a bit, we end up with Panghorn, the wife, and the two toddlers, all in a summer house in Maine, kind of taken hostage.
Like it's down a long drive in a forest by a lake, lots of trees.
Yes, because the imagery that they see coming in is everything is covered by the birds, like everything. Like imagine Hitchcock's birds.
Cars rolling in and he's crushing over them as he's driving in.
Right. He does exactly say that. Like the only way to get through is just squash a few of them. And I think he talks about like some trees would fall over, and a sparrow weighs nothing. So how many are there to wait through? And basically can't conceive of how many there are. He's like, I have no idea if this is millions or billions, as far as the eye can see. But there is a circle around the house where they just won't cross, like an invisible barrier. And we do learn that Stark has no idea. He hasn't looked out the window, so he hasn't seen them. And like we said, it's his blind spot.
Yeah.
So Thad goes in, and they go upstairs with the babies, I guess, to keep the two downstairs not running off. And they start writing the new novel.
Yeah.
And the wife is kind of perplexed because she starts to see him enjoying it.
Yes.
Her husband enjoying it. And at one point she says that she couldn't tell the difference. So up until now, Stark has been sort of morphing and falling apart and basically rotting. And now that they've started writing, he's sort of coming more and more to life. This is the most we get to an explanation where they kind of say, you're the ghost. Some sort of a word becomes a thing, ghost.
Yeah.
It's pretty breezed over, and we'll talk about it later, but I guess it's for the best.
Yeah.
And there's even a line where George says, it doesn't matter where I came from, all that matters is I'm here.
Yeah.
Which covers that, I guess.
Yeah.
And so whilst they're writing, George's plan is, I don't know if I missed this, I'm sure I did, but he pulls out a bird whistle and blows it, and the surrounding swallows just...
Dad does this, not George, yeah?
Yes, obviously. Sorry, when I said that, I meant the other thing.
Cool.
And the birds basically descend on the house, and there's a fight ensuing, but overly Stark is just taken by the sparrows, and pretty sure everyone else lives.
Yeah, everyone else lives.
And this is what I remember, is that it's a very abrupt ending. And I've realised I do like books that have an afterward, like they were moving into their new house 1 year later and this thing happened, sort of thing, because it sort of ends about 1 minute after his body is taken away and they're hugging.
Yeah, completely.
But I guess the only thing of note here is that his wife sort of says, I don't know what will happen. I feel like I've seen too much of my husband. His dark half is sort of back in him. So there's a sort of implication that, I don't know, he
doesn't like what she's seen.
Bad side. Yeah, or he has a bad side that he's willing to let out. And that's...
We're going to have to pause you for a second.
Yes. Hello, welcome to part two.
Part two. Okay, so yeah, we've just summarised the book.
Yes, sorry. We should have done a spoiler warning because...
we can...
just did it in the text.
Yeah.
So... Yeah, that is...
you thought the ending was abrupt?
Not the ending action, but just the last sentence.
Yeah, it kind of finishes in the house. Everybody following along, gone. Oh.
Yeah, they literally hug it out
Mm.
as the camera fades to black or pulls up or something. And I guess we can talk about this now. Is the film adaptation?
Yes, Timothy Hutton.
Timothy Hutton and George Romero.
Yes, George. Yes,
Now the Living trilogy. I have seen it, and I'm pretty sure it was after I read the book.
Yes, same here.
What are your memories of it? Wait a minute, hang on. I don't move too fast. What? Too late. I was going to say, what were your impressions of the book when you finished it?
My impression, it's like I said, it was my first ever Stephen King book. I liked it so much that I carried on and now became a collector of his works. And I thought it just, the way he wrote the way he writes is consistent, I think, in the way that it affects me. When I'm reading his books, I find myself at certain periods, not all the way through the book, 'cause I'll be dead at the end of it, but at certain periods where, like a 5-pager, where you forget that where you are, what you're doing, to breathe even, and you're just like, this is what the and then suddenly the climax hits and it's like, and breathe, and then you suddenly look up and you're like, Jesus Christ, I've been sat on this platform for the last 20 minutes, the train I wanted has gone past, completely missed it, but whoa, your heart is pounding in your chest. I haven't had another writer do that to me the way that he does it. And this was the first book that he did it to me in. Some of the way that people die. I remember there's just being completely hooked, and the style and speed at some of the sections in the book and the way that it was written. So that's kind of.
He does certainly. There are at least, I'd say 2/3 of the books I've read of his, and I'd say I've read 15 or so, maybe. Mm-hmm. Just go really fast, despite their size. Mm-hmm. Even the ones I don't particularly enjoy, they do go down easy, and I do feel like I read his stuff fast. Yeah. And I don't know what it is about it. I guess none of them are particularly complicated. So I would say The Stand, of all I've read, not most complicated. It just has the most characters. Yeah. So you need to keep focused, because the first half of that book, before it narrows down, you're dealing with more than 20 characters, I would say.
And you're introduced to a load of characters that just die straight away anyway.
Right. Yeah. It narrows down on that one. And I do remember the dark half. I guess I did stop reading it for a while in the middle, but the duration of reading that first half and the second half was pretty short.
Yeah. And there isn't an awful lot of characters in this dark half, if I remember rightly.
No, there is pretty much the main three.
Yeah.
The main.
And then the people that get killed.
I guess the main 4, 6, if you include the babies, who don't really do much. There is also a fair amount of his that I really enjoy when I'm reading, and then when I'm finished, about 2 days later, I go, that was kind of silly. I was really into it, but now I've finished it and I can look back, that was kind of stupid.
Yeah.
I guess, not to upset a lot of his hardcore fans, but like that's kind of what beach reads are, right? Like, you'll read this on a beach and it'll be engrossing. Probably won't change your life, but then not everything is wanting to.
You say, are you saying that Stephen King is beach read?
He certainly can be, and I probably would say that this dark half is one of his beach reads.
Okay. So what is it? Give me a beach read that isn't Stephen King, just so I got a sort of ballpark.
Oh, you're throwing him at me. Well, that isn't Stephen King.
Yeah.
Oh, did you
like Boons and Mills?
Well, I mean, I guess so. I guess I just mean
the Vinci Code.
Like, I guess mostly thrillers and horrors, I suppose.
Okay, so like Harlan Coburn,
kind of adrenaline.
See.
and they have enough plot to keep you going,
Yeah.
but they're also kind of convoluted that you can't get hung up on it. I'd say Beach Read doesn't really make you think too hard, because
Right. Okay, yeah.
it sort of suggests you're on a holiday relaxing and you just want to be told what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
It's like a popcorn
sort
flick.
of pure
A-
entertainment issues. They're
cool.
not trying to make their mark on the world.
Yeah. So it's kind of like The Expendables and Eyes Wide Shut.
Yeah, I guess you could say it's the equivalent of a popcorn movie.
Yeah.
Like it's this,
And it's really,
people will enjoy it, whether they'll be talking about it in X amount of years, which I guess isn't the case because we're still talking about it now, however many years later. Um,
okay.
but, I mean, I think it's a really personal one for him because Stephen King did have his own.
So the history part of it, this is cool.
Yes,
A
this
little
is
bit
your section because you'll know this more than me. You can explain this bit.
Yeah. So his pseudonym, the person that the ego, the other person he wrote as Stephen King, Richard Bachman, is in essence the exact same thing as what George Stark is. He was able to write as Richard Bachman a series of books that were more graphic in nature, more bloody, in the same way that Alex Machine's killings in the Dark Half are really bloody and different to Tad's work. This is the same for Richard Bachman as Stephen King's work.
Right.
And do you know the reason? The reason he started Richard Bachman was because the publisher he was with was limiting to him to a certain amount of books a year, and he was writing more than he was allowed to publish.
Okay.
So he created Richard Bachman so he could publish more in the same year and make more money. Plus, it was an experiment to see whether he could get success as another writer that wasn't attached to him.
Right.
And then I believe it was Needful Things. Is it Needful Things? Or it might have been Blaze. But there was one of the books, I can't remember which one it was, where...
I'm pretty sure Blaze is Bachman, but Needful Things.
Richard Bachman's Thinner. He wrote that, and that was the book that somebody was like, "This is you."
It gave him away.
It it was given away. And so then after that, he decided to kill him off.
Right.
And they had this fake.
So there's about 5 or 6 Bachman books, right?
Yeah, something like that.
One of them I've read is probably one of my favourite Kings, or Bachman's, I guess, which is The Long Walk.
Yes, a lot of people say that. I haven't read it, but a lot of people rave about that book.
I don't know why. I've probably read it. I think it's the only King I've read more than once. It's fairly short. I mean, you knew that another time. But have you read any of his Bachmans? From what I've read,
no.
It doesn't feel like there's a change in style.
Okay.
It's not like when J.K. Rowling finished with Harry Potter and then moved on to like murder mysteries.
Casual,
like
people
have figured it out.
Yeah. But yeah, that's a reason for it.
Right, and I guess this book is expelling a lot of demons on that. I know in the Dark Half, the reasons are a bit different. It's because he wanted to write something without a critical eye on him. But I guess that it definitely opens up things he would have experienced, I suppose, with ego taking over. And I guess it's not really heavy in the book, but they do talk about a few issues of alcoholism.
Yeah.
And knowing that Stephen King had that.
I think that he wrote the Dark Half. I think the Dark Half is the first book he wrote after he'd given up.
Okay, because that's pretty interesting. Because I know he in interviews with The Shining, he talks about that as, this is about addiction. This feels like something similar, I suppose, because
I think Tommy
torn between being the good person and being something which brings out the darker side in him. But we get later on, like I said, when they're writing together, he actually starts to enjoy it and is having fun and very Star Warsy dark side. He talks about that pull, the alluring, and why it would be there. Cool.
Okay, so I don't know whether this is going to work, This is quite cool. I don't know if you know this or not. Can you name? This is like a little pop trivia.
Okay, here we go.
Can you name a computer game that's based on a Stephen King game? Their book.
Can I name a computer game? Let me think. I mean, are we talking in an era? Because I would bet that someone has done an app game of The Shining or one of his more classics. I guess Carrie was... I can't imagine them making a game of Carrie. Intuitively, I want to go, yeah, that would have been perfect with the era. But because of its content and the underlies of what that film's about, I also imagine no game wanted to touch that one. What are his big ones? I'm guessing it would be something that came from a big movie. So I'm thinking of... So was there a Shining game? Do you know?
No.
Okay. But is there one, or are you asking me if I can remember?
I know the answer. Okay.
Let me have a quick think of his bigger ones. I'm guessing The Gunslinger was a bit too coldish to have a game.
Tie in.
Dreamcatcher. I feel like...
I read Dreamcatcher, but I can't imagine that would make a good game, would it?
All right. Okay, you have to give me the answer.
Okay, so there's... if I'm right, if I can remember, I can't remember exactly, but it's 3 or 5 games that have been made into Stephen King.
Right, let me...
books.
I'm going to look at a list of his books to help jog my memory.
No. Yeah, so The Lawnmower Man.
Oh, of course, yeah. That is...
that was made into a game. F13.
Which one?
F13, which is a game based loosely around things to do with Stephen King.
Okay, so that's like a Stephen King universe.
And I'm drawing a blank now. I'm sure there's 2 others, but they're not, like, very, very loose, hardly anything to do with Stephen King at all, but nods too. And then the only official Stephen King game that was released was, and I'll go see if I can find it, see if I can share my screen with you and show you. Desktop. Let's go just WhatsApp. Share.
Well, you're going to say it was Carrie in the end. Here you go.
Okay, so we go here. Look at this. This is classic. Can you see this?
Game. They made a game out of this.
Yeah. It's mad. I found this earlier on. I was like, no way.
People of entertainment software.
The Pap song. Here we go.
Oh, wow. They're starting at the beginning. We're getting our prelude to the story.
We found the boy's tumor.
Wow. There we go. There is the eyeball in the brain.
Brilliant, isn't it? So this is a game that I think was released in 1986. 1984?
Tie in with the movie?
No, it's based off the book.
Okay.
I believe. 1992, there you go. 1992 was released. Based on Stephen King thriller. We go through.
Come forward, what kind of gameplay are we?
23 years later, this is after the bit that you said, then you got this text. This is quite cool.
Is this a click and...
Point and click adventure.
Oh, wow.
There you go. There's old, what's his name? Digger.
I did not know that this existed, and I imagine a lot of people...
It was released. I couldn't believe it. I was like, no way. There's entire playthroughs on YouTube.
I'm guessing you play as Dad.
Yeah.
Not George.
Whoa.
There goes Steve Digger, the local graveyard digger.
So yeah,
well, look how I pictured him.
It's mad, isn't it?
That is something I did not know existed, and yeah, I might have a look at a walkthrough of that.
Yeah. I thought that was a really cool little thing.
So talking of spinning off of the media, we can go back to the film. Sorry, I sort of cut you off earlier.
Yes, the film. Yeah, I don't really. I know I've watched the film. I don't really remember it. I remember Tim Hutton was in it. He was quite a good actor at the time.
Apart from that, it's my problem with Timothy Hutton. I have seen The Dark Half, and that's the only thing I've seen him in. So people kind of say his name like I should know it from.
Yeah, he's in a lot of FX TV series. He was in one of those for some quite long running. He was in recently House on Haunting of Hill House.
Oh, he's the dad?
Yeah.
Oh wow, okay. Then yes, I do know who he is. Cool. I don't remember the film so much, but I do remember thinking they've almost stuck too closely to the book.
It was very close, yeah.
That although it was acceptable, it was kind of boring in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like I enjoyed it, but like there's no surprises.
No. But that's getting into a whole different realm, isn't it? Like, do you have when you're telling a story of a story in a different format, you can't really change it up too much.
Well, this is the huge issue, especially nowadays, that a lot of people have with things where they're making it into a film from a cartoon, a book, a comic, anything, is that they do change it. And the diehard fans kind of go crazy because that thing they've changed was the pinnacle point of it.
Yeah.
But it's a fine line of...
a prime example of getting it right currently is Final Fantasy VII Remastered. They've just released that, the re-release of a game that was like 20 years old or something now. Brought it bang up to date, new graphics, and added extra bits to it without messing too much with the core experience. So I think it can be done.
I mean, so recently we've had the It films made into films in the last few years, and they're pretty well received. The first part, certainly. The second part, it's pretty unanimous decision that it's not that good and a bit dull and a bit long.
I enjoyed the second part a lot.
I did, but certainly not a lot. I've seen it twice now. I saw it in the cinema, and then I watched it on an airplane. And the second viewing, I didn't finish.
Right.
It was just an onslaught of here he is here, here he is there.
Yeah.
But that's an example of something that changed. Like, I would still say you could read the book and get a lot from that. In a sense of surprises. It's not...
yes. I know exactly what you mean now, yeah.
But there are some films, I can only think of a bit of an obscure example.
But then that ties beautifully back to your beach read scenario. If you think about it, like the Dark Half film and book, or the film is so almost a mirror of the book and doesn't miss anything out because the book is so simple.
Right.
There's an awful lot going on in it. There isn't that many layers, as it were, like there is in, say, It, or Insomnia, or The Stand, which you wouldn't say were beach reads.
Right. I'd say the Dark Half is something you don't really need to cut because for time and, like you said, simplicity, you're already kind of at the minimum. I'm pretty sure they even keep all the names the same, right, to all the characters, which is I kind of find rare, and I never really know why. But often you'll watch a film from your book, and for some reason they've just changed the character's name for no discernible reason other than the screenwriter thought it rolled off the tongue better. I guess nowadays it happens a bit less and less because they're banking on the fan base of these things. But it is always something I always notice when character names change for no reason.
Neighbours.
Right.
Okay, here's another question for you. We're not in the middle of something, are we? I can just throw a question in, can't I?
No.
Which of these two covers do you think is better?
Well, the one on your left.
This one?
Yeah, obviously.
Obviously. Okay. Yeah. So why do you think, because this is the US first edition, UK first edition, why the different covers? And what is this cover? Why did the US get this one?
Can you hold up the US a bit closer? Because to me it looks like, is there a picture there? It just looks like a light smear.
It is.
They're both relying on his name, right? His name is pretty much always the biggest thing on a book, unless it's a movie tie-in. Then will be the poster cover.
It kind of looks like a something through frosted glass.
Okay, so this is like I was saying, I'll get you to post that video about the identity of horror books and how it's not as strong as it used to be. And this is a prime example of, if you pick up the US edition in a store and you didn't know anything about it, you don't know what genre that is. Is that a thriller? Is that a kidnap thing? Is that a domestic abuse novel? We get, obviously, the title and the colouring. It's, a serious book and it's not a comedy, but you would not know that it is a horror, I suppose. And I guess with the other cover, you kind of get the tongue-in-cheek of the UK cover, right?
Yeah. This is very sort of...
Like, I think if you were reading this and then you're not really into paranormal or fantasy, and the plot unfolded as it does, you kind of wouldn't be too upset or surprised, and you probably keep going.
Surprises based on the
right.
you're getting yourself into. Whereas this, I would say that this is a horror cover, but a nondescript.
Right, like this could easily be like if you said this is a detective book and there's a few in the series, I would also believe that.
Yeah.
It basically gives nothing away for better or worse, and in this case, I would say worse, especially because it's Stephen King, who by this stage was a global name, right?
Yeah. He was this
book. What his big one
behind Tom Clancy.
Oh, okay, right. That's kind of interesting. It does feel like there was an era where kind of dads dominated the bestsellers book, and business books dominated the bestsellers. Right.
And this was one of this with Hodder and Sturgeon, Viking. Yeah. So these with Viking, the publisher Viking here, and because he was second on the bestseller lists that year, that was the catalyst, or one of the catalysts, for him changing his publishers to whoever he's with now, which I believe is...
It's gone.
No, I can't remember what I think. Maybe.
I mean...
But yeah, he changed his publishers again because he didn't want to be second on the charts. He wanted to be the top of the charts.
What was he second to?
Tom Clancy.
Oh, I mean, I don't know, man. That kind of feels a bit strict, right?
Yeah.
Maybe write a better book next time. Maybe. I mean, Clancy's still big, right? Like I was sort of trying to say, like in that era, it felt like, I guess I haven't done any research, but it wasn't surprising when political thrillers and presidential thrillers and court case thrillers dominated the top sellers. I don't know if that's a sort of a show of who was buying the books then, because now it's quite often young adult and fantasy often top it, with the occasional sprinkling of a crime novel that pokes in. But I can't comprehend anything such as the Harry Potter books in that era.
No.
It just felt like
they wouldn't have been as mainstream as they are now
back then. Yeah. But so he'd written a bunch of hugely famous novels before this one.
Yeah. Like
It and The Stand and Salem's Lot and Carrie, obviously. This is did you say it was a 90s book?
Yes, 92.
92, okay. And he probably started Carrie in 79? So he had a decade of novels.
Either 79 or 74, Carrie.
I mean, he had enough time to write a bunch of novels under another author and still that author.
So this was 89.
Okay. Where would you rank this on his list?
Of ones I've read? Like I said, that is tricky because I don't really... Because it's the first one I read, I hold it in very
spot in your heart.
Yeah. But things like The Stand and The Shining were really, really good.
I guess Like the beach read, especially with Stephen King, is some of them feel like they have a bit more volume and depth behind them that you can sort of pick apart whether it's there or not. Whereas the dark half, I guess it's kind of on the nose.
The beach read
Kind of says what it's about. You know what I mean? It doesn't really hide any of its themes or anything.
No, exactly that. Yeah, no, I can't give it a position. It's in the top 5 Stephen King books I've ever read.
5, that is a position. That's a high position.
It's difficult because I don't categorize. I just like it's a body of work, and then there's just on the whole, I think it's all really good. There isn't anything.
I would say, as much as I enjoyed it, it's on his more forgettable side.
Mm-hmm.
Like it isn't something I'm going to be raving about.
No,
like, it hasn't made that list, right? Like Carrie and The Shining and the seminal.
What if you were to recommend a Stephen King book to a non-Stephen King book reader? Which one would you tell them to read first?
Oh, that's a good one, I guess. I don't know. Is my answer to that? I guess I wouldn't pick one of his epics because they can go on, and if you like that thing, it's great. But there's times when it's just going on, and you've still got 400, 500 pages to go. Like I said, I really like The Long Walk, and I feel like that's pretty representative of his, and it's a quick read.
Yeah, but he's writing it someone else, though, isn't he? So.
That is true. That is true. I guess I can sort of say which ones. I mean, because I recently read The Shining, and actually, not that it didn't hold up, but I was expecting more, and I don't know if that's because of decades of saying it's his best thing, and the movie being so iconic.
Yeah.
In fact, we can do that next week. If I don't know what you've read The Shining.
Yeah.
It seems like we can do Dark Half, one of his more unknown stuff, and then next week Shining, at least because of the film, probably his most famous work.
Yeah. Yes, definitely.
And I think I only read it, I don't know, within the last year, so it's kind of fresh. Stay tuned for next week's Shining.
Stay hooked.
Yes.
Watcher.
Yeah, so there's one more thing I wanted to show.
Yeah.
Which is, if you just Google Stephen King bingo, there's lots. So I'm just going to pick a random one and see if we have it.
So you're going to do it, or I'm going to do it? You're doing it, right? Okay.
I'll read them out, and you can tell me if they check for you. So the main one is the main character or problem solvers are teens and kids, which is an X because we don't have that here, right?
Hang on, wait, no, I'm confused. You've lost me. What am I doing?
So basically, yes or no, I guess, this one. And we'll see if we can get a line, which is the main characters are problem solvers or teens or kids. In fact, let me see if I can just share this with you. That might be easier.
Okay, I'm just going to go to Lou again while you do that.
We stopping the video?
Yes. Sorry, the video. Just do that, and then go to this. Okay, right. Desktop, that one. Boom.
We're back, part 3.
What? Bring. Hello.
Hello.
Right.
So I'll send you a link. I think if you scroll down, there is the bingo.
So it was a full moon last night, the perfect time to relax with a beer and a werewolf movie. Today, we'll look at Silver Bullet. This is a werewolf story from the mind of horror legend Stephen King. So, it only makes sense that we should play Stephen King story cliche bingo. Okay, cool. Right, that's it. How do I play this? Talk me through it.
I think just scroll to the top one.
Top one?
Yep, the first one.
Click on it.
Basically, we're going to see...
Ooh.
Well...
Oh gosh. Stop it. Oh, this is harder than it looks. Right, there we are. We'll do that.
Right.
What am I doing then?
So we're just going to read these out and see which ones apply to...
Oh, crikey. All going horribly wrong, Scott.
Oh.
Get
3 passes is just too much.
Right, okay, so we just got what?
So it's just a bingo card, and we'll put a little imaginary X by each one that
Okay.
applies to the dark half.
Yeah.
So the main characters being kids and teens, we don't have in this one, but
No.
that is pretty big in Stephen King world.
I know what we're doing. Yes, I'm with you.
Right, clueless adults. I don't know about this one.
Clueless adults.
I'm actually going to say no. They
No, they're
are pretty
sweet
on
ones.
this from early. In fact, one of my questions was going to be to you is, if you thought the paranormal was coming into your life, would you tell the police? If you were a murder suspect and you believed that an imaginary
Well,
entity
yeah,
was
that's
alive, would you tell them?
Yeah, it's just like yeah.
Because on reflection, Panghorn is pretty understanding.
But would you say he's a clueless adult?
No, because he does spend most of the book going around this, trying to figure out if the twins somehow survived. He's pretty skeptical of them for quite a while.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so no, definitely not. Would I do? Yes, I think I would try it if it was the truth. I would always try and tell the truth.
Right. What if it meant that you could be locked up because you're the prime suspect?
Have you seen Invisible Woman? Man.
No,
That's exactly what that's all about, isn't it?
Oh, okay.
It plays into that whole psychological, like, it's not the fact that the guy's invisible, it's the fact that he's invisible. You know, like, this guy is messing with her mind and she can't prove it to
any relationship to the original novel?
I believe yes.
Okay.
More closely
modernized and funked up.
The previous films. Okay, so next one is disturbing sex scene or act.
No, we don't get it in this one, actually, which I guess, again, does come fairly in the Stephen King ones, but not this one.
No.
There is obviously quite a despicable character threatening a fair amount, but nothing actually happens.
No, nothing that involves sex or sex acts, really.
No.
The penis in the mouth is...
There is something I thought spiked out was the first death that is linked to him. So the second death after the guy who gets clubbed to death. The chapter starts with a call girl in New York. And we're basically introduced to her. We have a snippet of how she got into the life she's in. And then she goes into the room of this client who she knows, and he's the first dead person.
Right.
And it did feel strange that we're introduced to her, but that's her only part of this book.
Yeah.
I can't be bothered to Google it, but I don't know if you've ever read James Herbert's Rats.
Yes.
The whole book is like this. It's very short and it works really well. You're literally, each chapter is a victim and you're introduced to them, good or bad, and then they die. And then eventually the story takes over. But the majority of the book is this. And it kind of reminded me of that.
Yeah.
But because it doesn't really happen in any other part of the book, it stood out a little.
Yeah.
But
do you think that's a necessity rather than, like, that's the only way he could have done it?
Well, like we were saying, there's not many characters in this.
Yeah.
And the ones we do get are actually kind of flat.
Yeah.
I guess we're going to interrupt this bingo because I don't know if we talked about how Stephen King writes women. And so in this, we get like the mother, the wife, like her early introduction, she's kind of being bitchy to some house guests, which is like, where did that come from? And then she gets involved a little. She hides a knife under the sofa at one point, but she's kind of there to be someone to be saved. She's the woman who gets kidnapped, and she's got the baby. She's always sort of screaming, my babies, a lot.
Yeah, she's got a bit of a shock.
And she's basically there to be the wife
of
the main guy, which I think that happens a fair amount in King, right? They don't really get their own action.
I'd argue that, again, it's like not a necessity of writing, but it's a necessity of the story. If the story dictates that the woman is portrayed as a background character, like a woman that just works at home, washes the dishes and does all that sort of stereotypical sexist stuff that people refer to, the way they refer to it, But if the story needs a character like that, then there shouldn't be a reason not to be able to write that character, if you know what I mean. Shouldn't
That's
be.
true. But then if the only other female character is this call girl who is here
Mhm.
to be a call girl and to discover a corpse.
Do you think if you had written that story, you would have deliberately written more female characters in because you felt you had to give representation a fair?
I don't know if I would have put more in because, like we said, there's only a handful of characters in it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But it's tricky because I guess even in the end, Panghorn doesn't actually do anything. He's just kind of there, and it's unfolding.
It really is basically about George Stark and Tad Bowman.
It is, and I guess that's where the lows in the story are, is where we're following Panghorn actually being a detective because we know the case.
Yeah.
So it's kind of irrelevant watching him trial and error what it could be.
Cheap beer or cigarettes?
Yes, we have that. We have our first tick. I'm going to put one tick there. That is Pall Mall cigarettes because when he would write as
George,
he would smoke and drink.
Yeah.
And there are talks of alcoholism, but it's not in the book. It's just some references to the past.
Yeah.
Right.
It's interesting that like one of the writing proverbs or whatever, I think that's proverbs the right word, they say is write what you know. You hear that a lot for writers. Write what you know. Write what you know. Pull from your own experiences, which is basically exactly what this book is all about.
Right. It is absolutely
about
writing with alternative name.
Okay, so town or community with a dark secret?
No, not in this one.
No, I wouldn't say so.
They refer to some other books.
Mutilation or muling?
Yes, we'll put a big. We'll make that a big one.
Mm-hmm. Small town, likely in Maine.
Yes, this is absolutely in Maine, and not only that, but it's Castle Rock, his infamous one.
Flashback.
Ooh, I don't know if flashback counts because.
Yeah. Do we open at the beginning and then jump forward, or do we open in the past and jump back to the future?
I'm going to say no because there's a lot of other books where it relies on flashbacks.
Yeah.
And this one doesn't. We have the information, and although the information is expanded upon with the sparrows around the hospital, it doesn't feel like it's a flashback. It's just information we've gained.
Yeah. Go on.
So a major character is or becomes a rider. Yeah. That is the crux of it.
Blue collar worker. No,
not this time, huh?
No. Psychic powers? Kind of.
Yeah, I'm going to say yes.
Yeah.
Because we have one. I would say key scene I totally neglected to talk about is where they are talking with each other, not phonetically, like
telepathically,
and they learn that they can kind of control each other in the subconscious. So George is writing something that Tad can't control, or vice versa. And to break out of it, he stabs himself in the hand, which makes Tad stab himself in the hand. So that's a big yes for psychic powers.
100%. Something is evil, which is not usually evil.
Well, no, not in this one.
The Starlings?
Well, they kind of turn out to be good, right?
But they're like an evil presence throughout, aren't they?
But are they a warning? And they ultimately take care of
us.
I'll let you decide this one.
The disappearing dad? Yeah, no, I'm going to go with no.
Yeah, no disappeared.
There's no disappearing dad.
No. Someone mainly known by their nickname.
Yeah.
We do have Steve Digger.
Yeah.
But he's not in it much. I don't think any of the others are.
No.
They just have their names.
Okay, so we'll go no then.
Yeah, I feel like Steve Digger is only in for half a chapter.
Yeah. Scary fundamentalism? No.
No, I guess not.
There's no like cults or anything like that, is there?
Yeah, I guess that you will succumb to your dark side if you let it, but I don't know if that's not really covering that.
Family drama as more important than supernatural one.
Uh no, not really. Like we said, this one's quite a simple one.
Yeah, it doesn't go to the same realms as The Shining did.
Oh, I see. Yeah, no, in that case, not at all. The drama of the family is whether he's sort of good or bad.
Yeah, whereas this is just a flat out creature feature.
Horrible non-monster bullies. I mean, I guess so.
Really?
Well, he's kind of a bully. I mean, he's more of a murdering psychopath.
But he's a monster though, isn't he?
That is true. So we'll let this one slide as a no.
Yeah, no. Narrator overly foreshadows upcoming events.
Oof, well,
there's no narrator in it, is there?
we do get a lot of sparrow talk.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know on this one. I don't think I was quite paying enough attention.
I don't think there is, personally.
We'll go with that.
Maybe our viewers can tell us in the box below, whatever that is, the comment section, what they think. Dark comedy, definitely.
I guess.
Because George Stark is quite darkly comic, isn't he?
Yeah, he's strangely quite like chatty.
Yeah.
I listened to the audiobook, which was Someone Grover, but he also did the Stand audiobook.
Right.
So it was and the voice he did was very similar to the Walking Dude or the main villain from The Stand.
Right. Okay.
I guess I was picturing him that, but it's not actually explicitly said.
Song singing. Oh no, false scare, and or large red herring.
No, I don't think so.
No.
This one. I mean, we do get a lot of, could it be him? Could it be a physical person? Mm-hmm. But again, we, as a reader, are clued in from the beginning what's going on. So we know. That's almost the biggest.
Song singing or quoting. Don't know that one. Can't say for that because it's such a long time.
No, there's not much quoting. In fact, no, I think this is a low on that one. There's a few quotes, but it's not consistent.
Mm-hmm. Aliens.
No. I mean, would you say this story is a ghost story?
I would. Yeah. It's like a gothic ghost story.
But it's a very physical one, right? Like when you think of ghost story, you're not thinking of a guy driving a car, hitchhiking.
No.
Physically constrained. But that is the closest we get to an explanation. And they do use it loosely, but they do refer to him as a ghost.
Mm-hmm. And then ambiguous ending, definitely not ambiguous.
No, I mean, there's the little hint of his wife not really thinking she knows him anymore.
I mean, I guess you could argue that
he is carried off by the sparrows.
Yeah.
Ipso facto, he's dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I don't think we get a bingo.
No, we definitely don't get a bingo.
We get a good fill out, but not a bingo.
Mm-hmm. Wonder what book would give you a bingo. Let's not discuss that. We'll wait till we find out. Tune in next week to see if next week's book is a bingo.
Right.
Let me just close this. And hang on, wait. We'll stop share. That's what I want to do. Then we'll go back to the main screen.
All right. I think that's all my thoughts on the dark half.
Yeah.
I think we got a lot more out of it than I thought we would.
Yeah, I thought that was quite a comprehensive breakdown. So overall, are we going to mark them out of 10 as we go along?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to give this a 6.5.
6.5. Okay.
Yes.
I would give it a. Bearing in mind, I read it when I was a long time ago, but I'm still going to give this a solid 8.
A solid 8. All right. And do you? I had a question, but it slipped my mind. Do you think you would read this again?
I'm tempted to. Yeah, definitely. It's one of the ones I would like to read again because I read it so long ago. But there's so many others I want to read that I probably won't read.
Right, we'll never get forward if we
keep. If I suddenly became a really quick reader and I could read something like that in a day or two, then I'd probably read it again. Yeah, definitely.
I do think that it was really enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, it's not that good. So sometimes I don't know whether enjoyability and is it any good. The two factors sort of overtake.
Are they intertwined?
Which is why my 6.5 score comes from, because I think that the enjoyability does overtake the fact that it's not that good.
Yeah. It's not, like you're saying, it's not the peak Stephen King, but
no,
still very enjoyable.
Yes, because it's something that's so close to him that he almost experienced with Writer Egos. It is quite basic.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess seemingly he could have gone a lot more into it. Whether that would have made it better, I have no idea. Outside of The Outsider, are there any of his other books that dealt with the same issue of alter egoing?
I think, if I'm right, this book is it's a trilogy of books with I think it's this one, Needful Things, and Sundog.
Okay, yeah, I've got a copy. I think the last Stephen King I read was the first story in 4 Past Midnight, which is the Langoliers.
Langoliers, yeah.
And I think in that collection of 4 is the Sundog.
Yeah.
But I haven't read it. A trilogy of what, though?
3 books that in some way interconnected with a recurring character that appears.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that's what happens.
Interesting. I haven't read those other 2. I'll check them out sometime, I'm sure.
Okay, cool.
All right. Well, that's
that's the end of first episode 1 of our weekly podcast. Hopefully you found something interesting in that. I enjoyed it. Yeah. Did you enjoy it?
I did. We'll try and get it more structured, I guess, next time. But I'm impressed that we had something. And like I said, I think we got more out of it than I initially thought.
Yeah.
Cool. Shining next week? Or that's a conversation we'll have off camera.
Yeah, we'll do The Shining next week.
All right, cool. Well,
I'm going to stop this recording then. So thank you very much. Subscribe.
Yes. Be safe and read a book.
Malarkey. Yeah. Thank you very much. Bye.